Welcome to the Bridging the Gap podcast, where our mission is to encourage, equip, and empower every woman on her faith journey with Jesus Christ. Today, we are honored to sit down with author, pastor, and Bridging the Gap event coordinator, Kristen Ostrem, to hear her conversation with our podcast host, McKelty Bloom. Kristen and her friend, Rachel Hastings, co-authored the 21-day devotional titled Win the Wait, about waiting for a future spouse. Kristen shares the heart behind this book and what it looks like to win when you are in a season of waiting. McKelty and Kristen discuss waiting in all areas of life. As everyone is waiting for something, what does it look like to win in the middle of it? Kristen shares how not to create an idol out of something you're waiting for, as well as how to be mindful of your beliefs about God and yourself as you are in a time of waiting. You'll hear her share the blessings of connection with the church in all this, and just how impactful others' encouragement, prayer, and mentorship is for your waiting. This is the perfect episode for us this Valentine's Day. I hope you enjoy this podcast. Well, this is a real treat to have Kristen Ostrem joining us on the podcast today. Kristen, welcome to the BTG podcast.
Thanks, McKelty. It's so fun to be here.
It is truly a treat to have you. You're BTG royalty. That's what I've deemed you. Anybody that knows you just loves you. We know how hard you work within BTG. For those that might be unfamiliar with you, you are the executive assistant to BGD. You were under Carol Lund's leadership. You are now under Angie Getz's leadership. You have been around for so long. You are truly just the hands and feet behind every single event and running around making it all work. And so it is just truly an honor to have you on the podcast. And we're going to be diving into actually a book that you authored, which is so exciting. And I know is going to be a huge, huge, huge encouragement to both men and women in a variety of different ways. But before we jump into it, I would love for you just to introduce yourself and tell a little bit about who you are, and also share a little bit about your co-author too, because you did not write this on your own. So I would love to just give a little shout out to your co-author as well.
Yeah, well, thanks, McKelty. This is so fun to be here. So like you said, I'm Kristen Ostrem, and I'm a Minnesota girl, and I grew up in southern Minnesota and started working for Bridging the Gap in 2014. So this is going on my 11th year here, and it's been just a blessing to get to be around so many amazing women, working on teams for over 10 years with women who are strong leaders, people of faith, so much difference in personalities and creativity and giftings. And it's something that I love about working here is the unity that this team has had. And the first missions trip I went on, or one of the first, I heard a missionary say, look at what God can do through a humble and unified body. And I've been able to see that through this team. It's been so fun to learn from everyone and to get to work on such a unified team with people who are not just my now teammates, but friends too, like you. So it's been a blessing to work with this group and to be under Carol, learn so much from her and have great respect for her. And Angie, the same. I've been loving working for her. This is our 4th year together now, which is wild how fast time goes. But yeah, in 2020, I got credentialed with the Assemblies of God. And then in 2023, published a book with my friend, Rachel Hastings, who I met at church. This was totally a God connection, but we met on the worship team one week. And a couple weeks later, we went to a women's event and ended up sitting by each other and decided we wanted to hang out. So we went out to eat a month or so later, and sitting across from her, both of us, we're in the same stage of life. And in Proverbs, it says, hope deferred makes the heart sick, but a longing fulfilled is a tree of life. And both of us, having been single people, having had some disappointments happen, and sharing stories over the dinner table, I was just crying. And it was a sweet night just to get to spend time with a friend in a similar season. But after that, I was on my way to church one week, and I had thought, I want friends and I want a husband. That was a thought on my mind. And I had this thought of, well, fast. So I started that day just fasting sugar, like desserts, and I was thinking of going for 40 days. I didn't make it all the way, but just as thinking about this desire of wanting friends, wanting a husband. And so anyway, about a week and a half later, I had thought, oh man, I should have invited Rachel into this. So I contacted her and asked if she wanted to do the same, and she did. So we started becoming prayer partners on the phone, talking about things God had been teaching us as single people and desires and praying for the next stage of our life. And as I was hearing her, if you ever meet Rachel, she is a person of faith and just encouraging in her words. And as I was going back and forth with her on these voice messages during our prayer partner period of time, I was like, wow, we should write some of this stuff down. And some of the things Rachel is saying are just so encouraging. And so we started making steps to putting a book together called Win the Wait, 21 Days of Prayer and Reflection as You Wait for Your Future Husband. And in it, where we just have some different lessons that God has been teaching us, through the years of us being single and things that are on our mind. And so through the book, anyway, our hope was to encourage women who are single but wanting to be married. But more than that, the term to wait is not just for someone who's single, but everyone throughout our whole lives. We're all waiting for something. And so I think through the book, you can find whether or not you're single, or maybe you know a single person who is desiring this for their future, but what it looks like to wait. And there's different principles that we hope would encourage anybody who reads.
Yeah. And can you share a little bit about that too? Because I think that's an important concept as we're jumping into this, because someone might be listening that they aren't single, they're in a relationship, they're married, and they're struggling with waiting for something else. It might be waiting for a baby. It might be waiting for
Right.
a promise that they know God has told them about a career, about a move, about just any type of promise that they're holding on to, that they're struggling in that wait. So what are some of those principles that you have developed with just understanding of waiting in that season with God?
Yeah, that's a great question. It is true that everybody is waiting for something, or you will be at some point. And like you said, there's different things we might be waiting for, even a house to sell, just different prayers that you're hoping come to pass. And there are some things that are direct promises in the Bible. There's other things like with marriage, it may not be a direct promise of everyone will get married, but that's a deep dream in a lot of people's hearts, and different prayers that are lined with something good and godly that we can believe for. And when you're waiting, I found that timing is a thing that's important to God. There are verses even in Psalm 24, it says, wait for the Lord, be strong and take courage, wait for the Lord. Psalm 37:5, commit your way to the Lord, trust in him, and he will do this. He will make your righteous reward shine like the dawn, your vindication like the noonday sun. Be still before the Lord and wait patiently for him. In Galatians, it says, but when the set time had fully come, God sent his son. So timing is a part of God's plan in our life too. And so for anyone who's waiting for something, one, knowing timing, corn doesn't just grow where you plant the seed one day and the next day you have corn to eat. There's a process of growth. There's a process that God has in mind. But I think a big thing while we're waiting for anything is just to be mindful of what we're thinking about. There's a phrase, think about what you're thinking about. And our thoughts impact our beliefs, which impact our behavior. Our thoughts about God in a time when we're waiting, I think, are really important. There's a quote by A.W. Tozer. It says, what comes into our minds when we think about God is the most important thing about us. So as you're waiting for a husband, or you're waiting for your house to sell, you're waiting for someone to be healed who you've been praying for, what is it that your thoughts towards God are? Are you becoming more resentful of the waiting time? Are you becoming more in love with God being filled with more hope, knowing that he is good, like what is your perspective becoming towards God? And so that's, I think, is the first piece to take note of, is how am I believing right now in relation to God? Like, what are my thoughts about him? Is he bigger or is he becoming smaller just because I'm waiting? So that's the first
good.
thing. And then I have a couple other things too, but didn't know if you wanted to ask
Go
a
for
question.
it.
I can
Yeah.
keep going. Okay, so firstly, what am I thinking about God? And then what do I think about me? As I'm waiting and the timing keeps getting longer than what I wish it would, am I becoming more discouraged? Am I viewing myself more as a victim? Is this the main thing on my mind that's impacting everything in my life? And I'm choosing to become a victim in it, in that, oh, I'm single, or, oh, I still don't have this. You're looking at what you don't have versus you have a whole life outside of that one area. And there's a concept called the missing tile syndrome, where you walk into a room and say the room is lovely, it's beautiful, it's full of people, there's activities going on, but there's one little tile up on the ceiling that's missing. And we can have our focus be stuck on that one tile, and that impacts what we're thinking about and impacts how we're experiencing the event happening in the room. I've heard along with that, so imagine you really want a baby and all you see are pregnant women. You really want this or that. All you see is the thing that you don't have. So are you seeing yourself as a victim or not? So how am I viewing God? How am I viewing myself? Those are two important things when you're waiting to take note of.
Mm-hmm. I really like that. And, I was thinking too, as you were talking about that first principle of the wait and how you're seeing God. And that just really resonated with me of, when you're waiting, are you seeing God bigger or smaller? Are you having more hope, or are you getting more discouraged? And I just started thinking of all the stories in the Bible of all the people who had to wait, and all the people too who were given promises and had to wait. And I was just reading in First Samuel in the story of Hannah. And as she was given the promise of, yes, you're going to have a baby, she's crying out to the altar and she's told, yes, your promise will be fulfilled. And for me, I don't know why I'd always thought that it was instant, like, oh, she gets pregnant. But then that the verbiage caught me in one of like the 11th time I read it, that in due time she became pregnant. And I was reading different versions of the scripture, and I'm like, oh, it took a while. It wasn't quick that she became pregnant. And I started to think of, well, how was she feeling in those moments? Because she had this promise. Was she waiting in anticipation and excitement? Was she starting to be discouraged? Like, what did that look like? What did that mean? And started to reflect on my own journeys and process. And I want to be that person. I don't know about you, but I want to be that person that once that promise is fulfilled, I look back on it and I think that I held on to hope. I held on to faithfulness, and I knew, and I stood my ground instead of saying, oh God, I'm sorry I doubted you.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. And we're human, right? We get discouraged, but what does it look like to still hold on to that hope? Right?
Yes. And it's amazing how God works with, like, when he's still faithful, even when we're not. And so his plans, he still brings about this incredible result where he works everything together for the good of those who love him and who are called according to his purposes. But like you're saying, we want to be during the waiting season where we are. And this is like the title of our book, Win the Wait. We want to win. We want to be faithful and not doubting. We want to see God bigger than we are seeing him smaller. And I think of too, Abraham and Sarah, something that when we're waiting, even if we have a promise or we have a hope, that we're listening, we're growing and listening to God's voice and what the one next step is that he has for us to step into, or the one next thought that we need to take captive of or change. And so we're not just trying to make the promise happen by our own wisdom and understanding and effort, because God's ways are way bigger and better. And so like Abraham and Sarah, he had the promise that he was going to be the father of many nations, and he didn't know how that was going to happen. And so he tried, instead of through Sarah, tried to make it happen. And by having Ishmael with Hagar, it caused, issues that still are issues today. But with Sarah, had he waited, like, what would the story have been with that? But God actually still had Sarah have a baby, but when she was 90. So even though it didn't seem like natural timing, God is outside of our like natural abilities and can cause miracles. And so he had her still have a baby. And then I think it's fascinating how God still worked through that story. But another principle while you're waiting is to just not take everything into your own hands and try to figure it all out and make it happen on your own, but really to trust God, practice patience and trusting God and listening to his voice, and then taking the one next step that he's telling us.
Yeah. And man, easier said than done, right? Because I think you're right when you were talking earlier that our mind can so quickly go into well, what's wrong with me? The victim, like, well, what did I do wrong? Or in thinking like, am I being punished? I'm thinking of things I personally thought, like, is there something wrong with me? Is this just not in my hand? Or starting to get angry and starting to get frustrated and starting to be discouraged. And I'm just curious, and maybe you can speak from personal experience too, of looking at that tile analogy again. How can we focus on the beauty of the room instead of just that missing tile? What are those practical things that we can do when we're walking in our life and we're in this moment of discouragement and we're in that season of waiting, that we can still focus on the beauty around us in the season that we're in and not just on that missing piece?
Yeah, that's a good question. And like you just said a minute ago, it's easier said than done sometimes, especially when you don't know when the finish line is or if, what it will look like. Something that I've found in a time of waiting, I've heard it said that waiting is not just like sitting around and hoping, literally sitting, waiting for the next thing, but imagine it more like a wait staff person who, while they are waiting, what it is they're doing is active. So they are serving people, they are around people, they're living life. And so a thing you can do when you're waiting for something, instead of just focusing on the missing tile, excuse me, it says in the Bible that take every thought captive and give it to the obedience of the Lord. And so if my thoughts, all that I'm thinking about are that missing tile, to just take the thought captive and ask, hey, God, what do you want me thinking on right now? What's true in this, or what's a lie that I'm believing right now? And if he shares with you a lie that you might be believing, to break agreement with that lie, to give it back to him, exchange it for truth, and then start believing the truth, dwelling on what's good and lovely and admirable, dwelling on what's true. And as we start thinking on what's true, like, our thought patterns change, and then you get to see too, like, the beauty of what is around, what he is doing, being thankful. We see so many times in the Bible of how thankfulness, being grateful, is what God would have us do, being grateful in all circumstances. Okay, even though this is how my situation looks, what are different things you can be thankful for within that? Also, so along with just like keeping tabs and practicing on having good thought patterns, actually being active in getting involved with like what's happening in your life. Live life. One of the chapters in our book is called Live Today. And I had a long period of time where I was kind of stuck in depression and sad about the past, not sure what the future was going to look like, and kind of grieving. It's kind of a weird concept, but grief doesn't just happen when someone dies, although that is definitely part of that. But grief could be feelings from a loss or a hope that hasn't happened or something that's missing. And so, single people or those waiting for something could even be experiencing a form of grief because life hasn't turned out how they hoped it would yet. And so in that, though, we have precious time. Like today is the day that God has given us to live here, and he has a purpose for us. If you have breath in your lungs, like there's a purpose why you're on earth today. And I want to see that and experience it. And God has something good, like we talked about before. What's something that we believe about God during our whatever season we're in? Something that he's been just showing me that I could just take to the bank if I was going to say what's a characteristic about God that I know because he has personally shown me, is that he is good. And so I know that even in today, if a situation isn't the way that I want it to be, like he's good and he has good for me. He does good. And so like looking for that, God, where are you right now? What are you doing right now? Okay. This, road A wasn't the way, but road B is what I'm on. So what is good in this road that you have me on right now? And then just getting involved with that. This, like with Bridging the Gap, I've been able to learn from women for 10 years and have learned so much while still having a hope in my heart for something that wasn't yet. I was able to learn so much from women that I don't know, had I gotten married 10 years ago, would I have even had that opportunity?
Yeah, I love that. And, I think it's one of those things that as you're talking, I'm like, it's so good and it's okay to want something and to long to something, but to be cautious not to be consumed by something.
Yep.
So can you talk a little bit about idols and how we need to make sure that we are not creating an idol through our weight? And can you just share a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's a good point. So we have the ability to worship, and we have the ability to worry. And what is it that our first priority should be? It is, there should be no other gods before God. That's like the first commandment in the 10 commandments. And if we have something else that is more important, that's coming up between us and God, that we're always fixated on, we're constantly wishing for, thinking of, like, I am not satisfied until this thing is how I wish it was. Like noticing, is that an idol in my life? Would I be okay if that thing never happened? How would I be? Is it something that's an identity issue to myself? Like, am I this or that because I have this or that? Does a situation impact your identity? Are you, in a sense, worshiping that, or you're fixated on that too much? It's okay to want something for sure. And it's okay to believe for a promise that God has, but is that more important to you than he is?
Do you believe you have leadership potential? Bridging the Gap believes every woman is a potential leader, and we have designed a leadership conference to invest in your development. Whether you're an experienced leader in the marketplace, ministry, or your community and seeking to grow, or you would like to begin developing skills and network as a future leader, this almost 24-hour event is for you. Mark your calendar for February 21st through 22nd, 2025 at Lake Geneva Christian Center in Alexandria, Minnesota. We'll have main sessions with global Bible teacher, speaker, and mentor Charlotte Gamble, and worship with Keaton and Emily Getz. Multiple workshops, networking opportunities, exhibitors, and fun, all to encourage your leadership potential. You'll enjoy cozy up north activities, the after party, on-site meals, and you can even update your headshot. It's going to be a power-packed, wonderful event that you and your team won't want to miss. Secure your housing today. Register individually or as a group at mnbtg.org/leadership. We'll see you there.
I would love to talk to you a little bit and focusing on singleness for a second, and especially with singleness in the church, because that is something that is a very big conversation that comes up. I have a lot of friends that are single. I'm 30, And I have a lot of friends that are in their 30s that are single and they're in the church. And the conversation that comes up is, I feel left out, right? Like there's sometimes a huge pull in marriage ministry. Sometimes there is a single ministry, but usually then it's singles, but we're all looking to date each other type of ministry. So there's not really like an encouragement to be single and where you're at type of tuning into. And I think then that it can pull into this, I'm just speaking very freely here. It can pull into this narrative that where you're at right now isn't where you're supposed to be. You're supposed to be somewhere different. You're supposed to be on this different level, and you can feel less than. You can feel that I'm not in the place I should be at. And it can be discouraging, and it can make you feel rushed. It can make you feel, I need to be somewhere else. And I would love to just hear your thoughts around that as someone who has been single in the church. And if that is something you've experienced, if it's something your friends have experienced, and where your heart has been with that.
Yeah, I think that, everybody has a hope for something next. And so, like we were kind of saying, there can be a missing tile feeling in anybody in any stage of anything. And so to notice, like at church, people around you, everybody has gone through some kind of a pain of some sort. And that might be the thing that's on their mind. But how can we get to know where they're at and encourage them from there? Like something that's been helpful to me, not necessarily even about singleness, but I'm just thinking of how this can connect it. But the name of God, Emmanuel, God with us, is just so encouraging, because he is, like, in whatever stage of life I'm in, he is with me right here. And so I can encourage myself with that truth, like, God is with me, he is good, he has a plan for me. I can do that when I'm talking with other people who are also single or who are waiting for something else. Like, God is with you, he is good, he has a plan for you. And I can feel, I think everybody can be tempted to think that you're not there yet, or you're delayed, you're behind, whatever, on so many things. You see people writing books, you see people doing all of these New Year's resolutions, or they're starting businesses. And I'm like, I'm just over here enjoying the day. And I'm not, I didn't start a business yesterday and start training for a marathon. Like, what am I not doing? But looking at, okay, what is it right now that God has you doing? And that is good. Good enough to, like, you don't have to compare yourself to everyone else. But you can feel when, like, I'm 34, I've never been married. I have seen people who have 10-year-olds and they're younger than me. I'm like, woofda, I'm a little behind if I am comparing my life to theirs. And so to just not get stuck. So one is, we need to be mindful of our own thinking. Two is being around people who are, I think the church is such a blessing, where when during my single season, being involved with the church was such a huge blessing. I got involved with sisterhood at my church, which is a women's ministry, and there's women of all different ages. And so you have some who are in the same stage. That I think that's really important, to get to know some people in the same stage if you can, because you understand each other. You can, like me with Rachel in writing this book, we could be prayer partners. But then also I have people who are ahead of me in stages of life who can encourage me, and I'm asking them questions and I'm learning from them for when I do get to that stage. And then you have people who are so full of faith, and people who are just constant encouragers. And there's some ladies who, I have one lady, Diane Butler. She is such a blessing, and I don't even know her that well from personal experience, but she has been a consistent prayer partner for me. She'll just send me all these messages for a couple years, and she's praying for me a lot and praying for this desire for me. There's ladies at my church who they've prayed for me for years. It's like, when in the church we can find a lot of encouragement through people who are in our same stage, who are ahead of us, and who can simply just pray for us. And then we can be that for other people too. This is getting a little long, but I just want to mention how Rachel, I love just how encouraging she has been to me in the statement she would say that bring hope. So she would say, like, how is your hope level? And I can't wait until I get to meet your husband. Like, she would say things in faith that inspire hope. And we can be that for other people. And then in the church, we can find that as well, because we're all on these races of life and at different stages. And so not comparing, and then how can we use our words to encourage other people, and then how can we gain encouragement from other people? It's being involved. Get involved with the church. Don't just wait until they come to you, but the road goes both ways with relationships. So
I love that. I think one of the biggest benefits of the church is mentorship and discipleship, and I think that is a huge piece for single people, and just having other people pouring into them and praying for them, right? And praying that they would find their people, praying for in those seasons when they are discouraged, that sending them Bible verses, just like these women have been for you. And I know that there's been a team of people praying that you would find your person and that they would come along and all of these things. And so I think that is a way that the church can be so encouraging to them, and to be not doing the comparison, to not be doing sometimes like there's jokes. It's like, we don't need to be putting jokes anywhere, about people being single, but honoring them and where they're at and in their season of obedience, because there could be times where people could just rush into a marriage if they wanted to just for it, but they're choosing to be obedient and waiting for that person that God has called them to be with. So I think that's something we could be honoring instead. So I love that.
And I know that everyone is on a journey of something. You don't know, why is that person in the stage that they're in? Is it because they had a hurt happen? Is it because they have, we don't know why somebody's in the place that they're at. And so to just encourage them from then forward, like you said, with mentorship, with discipleship, with just truth. And so it doesn't really actually matter why you are or aren't, at the pace somebody thinks you might be, but God might be doing something unique and special with you, that the timing is just his timing. And I was just reading about Isaac and Rebecca, and just like the beautiful love story that is in the Bible. But Isaac was 40 when he married Rebecca. And I was like, no way, how awesome. Where people who have never been married, where he was 40, and it was totally in the plan of God, and God answered the prayer and confirmed that he had that match with Rebecca, and it was just beautiful. I was like, he was 40. We don't have to worry about timing. God is a God of hope. He's a God of miracles and creativity, and wherever you're at, he can turn your story for good, and he does work all things together for good.
Amen. I love it. Well, as we're wrapping up here, I would love for you just to just share any final thoughts of just how do we win the weight? What are just those final things of how do we win that weight and just continue to keep our mindset on developing that relationship with Jesus and just pursuing him? What are just any final thoughts you have?
Yeah, well, one is just, again, of how do we think about God during any waiting season? How are we thinking about ourselves? What are the thoughts that we need to take captive and give back to him? What are we waiting for? Well, in a waiting season, I do want to mention that it's okay to have a desire for the next thing, to be growing in your relationship with God, but also position yourself for a miracle. If you're wanting to become a lawyer, you need to go to law school. If you want to run a marathon, you need to begin training. If I want to be married, I need to be not just at BTG events, although there are great guys there, but who may be helping, but I need to talk with guys. And I do have an update in my story that I am currently dating someone, which God has brought my story down the road, but I did position myself for that. I didn't just stay at home, but I talked with a man. You know, you can get on a dating app. You can be involved with a group that has a man in it. You can let people know that you're interested in a relationship where then they're keeping their eyes open for you. So positioning yourself for a miracle is one thing. So how can you wait? Well, you can grow in your relationship with God. You can also be praying and positioning yourself for him to do a miracle in your life in the area that you're waiting for. And so we say in the book that a single woman who is winning the wait is actively growing in her relationship with Jesus, seeking his will and obeying his voice. She should steward her time, talents, and opportunities well while preparing for and pursuing her dream of marriage.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I think it's beautiful. Well, thank you, Kristen, so much for just sharing your heart on this and sharing your journey. I mean, it's not always easy just to share anybody's journey and testimony and something that's been hard. Like you said, it's been hard to sit in this process for you and to go through it all. And I love that there is a happy outcome in this moment. I love it so much. But can you just share with everybody how they can get this book? Especially we're releasing this before Valentine's Day, which was absolutely purposeful, so that people can get this book and just share it with a friend. I know that February is a hard month for a lot of single people because they have love shoved in their face. And so there's lots of people, lots of ways we could love on all of our friends and our single friends, and just giving this to them as a way to encourage them. It's that mentorship that we were just talking about. So what are ways that we can get your book and start even developing a group, because it's a devotional, so that there are ways you can do it as a group as well. So maybe if you want to share about that too.
Yeah, the book has verses to memorize, a write-up, a prayer, question prompts, and a song to encourage you every day for 21 days. And so if you are single, you can get this book for yourself. You can, like McKelty said, start a group with it. You can also get the book to encourage a single woman in your life. Also, if you're not single, you can get this book and learn similar principles. Ask yourselves these questions about a waiting season and how can you grow in the Lord during that time. But you can get the book at winthewait.net or on Amazon, but on winthewait.net, that's probably the easiest way to then click, which will take you to Amazon. You can get it there. And if you have any questions, you can email me through that website as well. But we're just so thankful for the opportunity to be on today. And and like you said, what February can be tough for a lot of people because love is shoved in your face. And if you don't, if you're not in a relationship, that's okay. It is okay. And you also can take that time, you can steward your time to encourage other people. So if you're single, why not encourage your other single friends and keep inspiring hope, just like Rachel has done for me so many times of, I can't wait until I do see the promise that God has for you come to pass, and just encourage people wherever they're at.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you again, Kristen, for joining us on the podcast today. It was a true honor.
Thank you, McKelty.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Bridging the Gap podcast. We were honored to hear from Kristen Ostrem on Win the Wait. Find the book on Amazon or at winthewait.net. You can also follow Kristen on Instagram at Kristen Ostrem. You can learn more about Bridging the Gap at mnbtg.org or by following MNBTG on social media. And we also invite you to take a moment to rate and review this podcast to help others find this resource as well. Thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to being with you next time on the Bridging the Gap podcast.